Hi, welcome to Unite Planet with my host, Andy Chaplin. So, Andy, how are you?
Bored as usual. What about yourself, Neil?
I'm fine. I'm keeping busy. I'm juggling so many different projects as usual. So I actually quite enjoy the fact that I've got so much to do. But we find ourselves yet in another show recording. So talking on paranormal topics. And so familiar listeners or familiar viewers to the show hopefully will recognize or even recognize the voices. But we've got pictures this time of we've got Dr. Ian Rubenstein, who joined us previously, just talking about mediumship. And we've got Ronnie and Philip Kinsella, who we've also interviewed on the past on mediumship and also UFO topics. So we spoke to Ian last time and we said, what do you want to chat about if we have you back on the show? And he said, UFOs. Without hesitation, he said, I want to talk about UFOs. So I thought, well, the best thing to do is get him back on UFOs, but get those experts on UFOs. And that's Ronnie and Philip, to come and discuss it with them, because they're the author of many different books on UFOs. There's also UFO experiences. So, gentlemen, Dr. Ian Rubenstein, welcome to the program.
Hi.
And
thank you.
Ronnie and Philip, welcome indeed.
Thank you very much, Neil.
You both seem to have a very angry Medusa in between you guys, the Kinsellas.
That's the fourth guest. Don't
look
too
at
much.
it.
Yeah, don't look too much at it, otherwise you're going to freeze and it won't be a time lag on the sky.
It's staring at you right there in the screen.
Yeah. No, you only got that recently, didn't you guys? You ordered that, yeah.
Ancient mythology, and we both do, and we saw it, and we thought, wow, we got to get that. It costs money, but never mind. When you got it, haven't you? At the end of the day.
Does it keep religious fundamentalists at bay when they answer the door?
You could use it as a door knocker, actually, couldn't you?
Good, actually. Put a big ring in its mouth.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, we're talking about UFOs. So I asked each of our guests prior to the recording what they would like to discuss in particular, any particular cases. And Ian, you said you wanted to discuss, was it about the Fire in the Sky film?
Yeah. That's the one I think is, it's got everything, hasn't it? It's got a flying saucer. It's got close encounters. It's got evidential, a lot of evidence from guys. So yes, that's what I'm going to talk about. And also I'd like to sort of talk about the Navy Pentagon videos, because there's quite a bit of confusion about the timeline and what people are actually seeing there. So I thought I'd talk about those.
Okay, just to remind listeners and viewers, Ian is a registered GP in the UK. That's a medical doctor for those living in the United States or Canada. So he's a doctor, but he's into psychic stuff. He does mediumship, or he goes to psychic circles. He's had psychic experiences, but he has an avid interest in UFOs as well. So it's very good that you've got that open awareness, open-mindedness about all these interesting subjects, because I was talking to my other half this morning, and I says, isn't it great that, you can have a doctor you can chat to, not only about your medical issues, but about the fact you've been abducted, and what cream would they recommend?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
a lot of KY jelly, I assume.
Yeah. And you can hypnotize people because you've studied that as well, so you can retrieve even the memories as well. So that's cool. Yeah. The man to go to for all your abduction and psychic problems. So
probably,
yeah. So I was aware of the Nimitz. What was the other one? You said it was on the east side of the United States.
Yeah. So the Pentagon released three videos. Actually, they've been circulating for some time. So you've got to get the timeline right. There's the first video really was from 2004. That's the Nimitz. That was off the west coast of America, and that was involved the USS Nimitz and the USS Princeton. So the Nimitz is a carrier, I think. The Princeton, I'm not sure. I don't think it's a carrier, but anyway. So and then about 10 years later, the next two videos, the Go Fast and the Gimbal videos, are from 2015, I think, and they were taken on the East Coast. So the first lot was the West Coast. The next lot were the East Coast off Florida, off Jacksonville, Florida, and they were from the USS Theodore Roosevelt. I think the confusion comes because the second lot of videos, they weren't actually when they were given out, but the Pentagon didn't say where they were from, and I think people had to do a bit of sleuth work. Turned out that the person who Lieutenant Ryan Graves, who was commander of Air Force group called, I think the Red Rippers, not an Air Force group, they'd be the Navy, wouldn't they? The Red Rippers, and they were doing training missions off the East Coast in 2014, 2015. And he listened to the videos and realized that he recognized the voices on those. So I think that's how they got the provenance of those. And the tic-tac video, I believe, was actually the first one. So that was seen by Commander David Fravor, who's an F-18 Hornet pilot. And then the video was taken by somebody else. I can't remember his name now, but he didn't actually take the video. And that's the, I think that's called the FLIR video, forward-looking infrared video. So we got the first one is the FLIR video, and that's the USS Nimitz. The next two are the gimbal video. It's called gimbal because it was taken from a gimbal, which is sort of a rotating structure underneath one of the aircraft. And then you've got the go fast video, and it's the gimbal video, I think, where you hear them say there's a whole fleet of them up there. So let's talk about the first one. That Commander David Fravor, and he's given lots of interviews, and he talks about the fact that they'd been seeing these UFOs. I think spotted the USS Princeton had been spotting them coming in about 80,000 feet and then dropping very, very low, very fast at unbelievable speeds and just hovering over the ocean. And that had been going on for a couple of weeks. Why there was a delay in them investigating, I don't know. But then David Fravor was sent out to have a look at them, and he saw this thing, and it was, he describes it like a large tic-tac, about 40 foot long, you know, like the tic-tac sweets. And it was sort of moving in the air, hovering over the ocean, but it was jittering. And he describes it like a ping pong ball in a glass, moving with that sort of, that motion. And it was hovering above the ocean, and there seemed to be something below the ocean, because these are Navy pilots, so they're very good at seeing things under, like seamounts. They're very much aware of the nature of the ocean. And he said that when there's a seamount under the sea, the quality of the ocean surface changes. And he said that this thing was just hovering over there, and then it was sort of move around. He tried to intercept it. And of course, this thing was going like UFOs do at amazing angles, whereas a plane would have to bank. And he tried to sort of go around it and catch up with it, but it would just move and sort of round. He couldn't keep up with it. So he didn't film that one, but I think a couple of days later, the FLIR video was taken by another member of his team. The interesting thing is they have these things called CAP points, which is combat air patrol points, which is where the planes all regroup. And he said that this thing seemed to know where their CAP point was, because it disappeared, and then he got a message saying, "You'll never believe this, but it's at your CAP point," which is closely guarded. So it seemed to know where their CAP point was, which means that it had access to information it shouldn't have done, because this is obviously a closely guarded secret. There's lots of rumors, apparently, that when they got back, the video was confiscated and taken by Men in Black. But David Fravor says this was just a load of rubbish. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen. But when he got back, he was subject to quite a lot of laughing and joking. They have these films on board ship, which they play on a continuous loop, and they're all about aliens and close encounters and this sort of thing. So you have to put up with a lot of ribbing. And the thing is, like all these things, it didn't really go very far, because when you've seen it, what do you do? He used to speak to his friends about it, but I mean, nothing seemed to be done about it. So what do? You go on and live your life. Well, the other videos were about 10 years later, and so the Red Rippers were flying off the East Coast doing a training mission, and they started seeing what looked to be boxes within spheres. But these UFOs didn't look anything like the tic-tac. They were like a sphere with a box inside, with the edges, the angles of the boxes, the corners of the boxes, actually touching the spheres. And at first, they thought they were seeing some sort of secret drones, and they were seeing loads of these. But no one seemed to do anything about it. But what caused the problem is that at one time, one of these UFOs came up in between two aircraft, and it's called split the squadron, which is something which you shouldn't do, and it's a highly dangerous thing to do. So they had to make a report. So things went higher, and then one of the I can't remember what it was, but then they saw a whole fleet of them. The fleet they saw was these standard box type UFOs, but there was one other one which was larger, which was sort of stationary and was rotating and then could move around. And that's the one you see on the gimbal, which looks like a gyroscope. And it could rotate at 90 degrees and flip around. So, and I think these were happening so often, they were taking videos and sharing them amongst themselves. But how they got out, I don't know. What happened subsequent to that is all a bit of a mystery. But anyway, they ended up getting into the public domain. And then they were released drip by drip. I think in 2017, wasn't it? December 2017, in the New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, and that's where we are with that. And of course, this all feeds into the To the Stars Academy. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Tom DeLonge, who everybody thought was just mucking around, turned out to be someone who really moved the field forward a lot. Now you've got people like Chris Mellon, who I think was with the DIA. I mean, these are high-ranking people. You hear that you've got politicians. I think Reid, who's a congressman who's very highly thought of, pushing the agenda to try and get these things released. So that's where we are with the videos. And I think probably it's a drip towards disclosure, isn't it?
I think even Trump, who you don't like, Ian, is saying that he wants to look further into the UFO question, and the things that he's seen about Area 51, he says are quite interesting, whatever that means.
Yeah, well, the thing about Trump is, I mean, he's a bit of a disruptor, isn't he? So if anyone's going to disclose,
it'll be him.
Yeah, but the other thing, of course, is if Trump, the other way of saying it is because people tend on the whole, he's very polarized. You either love him or hate him, like Marmite. Of course, and he comes out with stuff. If he does disclose, you can then disavow it, can't you? Because of course it's Trump. So it does seem to be a lot of wheels within wheels going on. Because I think there's a lot more going on. Well, there always is, isn't there? But there's a lot more going on with this than we know. I mean, this idea of reclassifying them from UFOs to UAPs is great, isn't it? Because you change the nomenclature, and all of a sudden, this is a new phenomenon. And UFOs, we didn't say they weren't UFOs. They used to say that they weren't investigating UFOs, but they're totally investigating UAPs, aren't they? So, watch this space go, I guess.
Yeah. Philip and Ronnie, were you aware about another one on the East Coast, the spheres in the squares, or did you know about that particular case?
No, I wasn't made aware. I'd have to look into that. Most definitely. That's very interesting, because we all, as researchers, all of us share and pass information along the way, and it is up to you to investigate or look into it further. Definitely. I'll have to, quite interesting.
It was the Princeton, is that right, Ian?
Yeah, the USS Princeton was the West Coast. So the USS Princeton, I think it was the USS Princeton carrier group, and it's the USS Nimitz was the aircraft carrier. I think the USS Princeton was the command ship there. I don't know how it works. And that's on the West Coast. Sorry, that's the West Coast. The set off San Diego. The later one is off the East Coast, and that was the USS Theodore Roosevelt. I think one of the confusions is that the Theodore Roosevelt and the Nimitz are both Nimitz-class nuclear aircraft carriers.
Right.
So I think that can cause quite a bit of a problem.
Right. Did they get gun footage?
Sorry. I don't know if they're gun cameras. I don't know what they are. I think they have these pods underneath them. So I'm not sure their gun camera. I mean, it's not like, I mean, I don't know how that works. I don't know the nomenclature, but they got footage off all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I've never, until you mentioned it, I never heard of this one on the East Coast. I always knew of the Nimitz on the California.
Ah, okay. Well, no, David Fravor, though, the one never actually, the one who gives a lot of interviews, really interesting guy. He actually didn't take any video. It was done by one of his colleagues afterwards.
Right, okay. Because I did see some something on YouTube the other week with one of the kind of pilots that sits at the back of these Tomcat F-16s or whatever they are, a lady pilot, and she was giving her take on the whole thing. And yeah, it's very interesting because they talked about a disturbance in the water as if something had come out of the water. They talked about the tic-tac thing. I didn't realize, I never heard in any of it that I'm aware of, that it moved backwards and forwards very quickly. Like you said, a ping pong ball in a glass.
Well, it was jittery, like it was jittering around.
Yeah. They did describe it as a tic-tac, but it had some sort of aileron type of thing coming off of it. Whether that's for stability or something, I don't know.
No. What it had underneath it, looked like L-shaped projections, like antennae.
Yeah.
But that doesn't show up in. Did they have a video of that? They did have a video of that one. It doesn't show up in the video because the resolution is not good. Apparently, though, what you're seeing is a copy.
Yes.
And in the original high resolution thing, because see, they were done on film. They were done on tape. But so I think the original, they are digitals, but they were done on tape. And I think the original one is slightly high. I mean, you still do get some degradation apparently when you copy from tape when it comes to digital stuff. So I think you could see the projections in the original.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things on the high definition, you can down res it, as it were. Like in broadcast, people can pay for a high definition service or an SD or standard definition broadcast. So they take high definition signals and just down, cut the number of lines in the picture or something. So it's quite possible that they could have tweaked it down deliberately for public release so that we don't see too much. Because although we are seeing stuff released to the public, like you say, it's a drip effect, I believe. And if you absolutely showed the highest quality photograph of a landed saucer with someone sitting outside it, that would shock the world. And so you have to, you don't want the kettle too hot when you're about to give them a cup of tea. So you do serve it with biscuits and sweeten it up a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Philip and Ronnie, what's your favorite case or cases? Because obviously there's two of you. I know that you like quite a few, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I just a moment of humour there, shocking the world. I just thought what it would be like if me and Ronnie removed our masks and there were a couple of graves sitting under it.
Yeah,
we have a wicked sense of humour. Well, you go first, Ronnie. Your favourite case. Go ahead.
Well, I do think, as Dr. Ian was saying about the tic-tac, I mean, I actually didn't know myself that there was something under the water, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, being that they are nuclear ships as well. I mean, people tend to think that UFOs are drawn to nuclear facilities. They seem to be attracted to them. But for these these incidents, I wouldn't think it was due to military interaction. I think what's happening is that these are being spotted so commonly now by the forces out in the sea that, as you said, this is much heavier than we've been led to believe. And these are just snippets, evidently, that have come out. Imagine what else they've recorded. Now, I have seen photographs. Whether they're genuine or not, I can't say. But photographs, I think you gentlemen have seen them as well, of past ships rising from the ocean. One of them looks like a huge cylinder. Another, I think, a triangular ship. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that the bases for these, and we will call them extraterrestrials, would be also underwater. I mean, what better vantage point would they have to be considered? They can travel through space or interdimensional. They slip underwater quite effortlessly. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're based under the water, beneath the water. But yeah, the favorite case of mine, I don't really have one. Because a lot of them are steeped in controversy, and of course we have to be very careful. But these are exciting, as Dr. Ian has rightly put forward, because they come from the military.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a 10. People scoff at all these cases, but as soon as the military is like putting forward the released files, you kind of sit up and take notes, and even skeptics have to then sort of kind of shuffle their feet a little bit over it, don't they? So yeah, interesting. Philip, what was yours of interest?
Well, I've had a varied interest in many UFO cases, but one of the crowning glories is Roswell. And I know people raise their eyes up, but there are a few contradictions towards that might lead us to the assumption that it was really something not from this world. We know the story where in 1947, July of 1947, the date is a little bit wobbly because no one can really account for when the actual craft or the object was discovered. But initially around about the 4th to 5th, maybe 6th of July, an object of unknown origin was, or fragments of that craft were discovered within the Roswell Desert region. And it took all but God-loving a sheep farmer, Mac Brazel, who had discovered, after hearing an explosion in the air because there was a terrible storm, fragments of this strange material. So strange, in fact, that when he was going out within the desert to try and get his sheep to cross a certain line, the sheep refused to cross it. And he realized that it was all due to this strange material that he described, and many others who were involved in this very sensitive and delicate case. But I've looked at the rawness of it before everyone else got involved years later. The material was very light. It couldn't be burnt. Couldn't be, if you bent it, it didn't make any markings on it. They tried to put sledgehammers to it. It didn't make any difference towards the construction of the material, which is now known as memory metal within certain clandestine military corps, or what we've heard from the research, namely Dr. Irina Scott, who obviously, as you're well aware, she was involved with a lot of, Project Blue Book and the Battelle Institute of Technologies. So going back to the case in hand, he discovered all these fragments and he took them to some friends. He actually rode out to some friends and showed them, and they were quite worried because there had been reports of strange lights in and around the skies of Roswell during the time. And remember, this was not soon the UFOs were seen over Mount Rainier by
Kenneth Arnold.
Kenneth Arnold, and they were wondering whether or not one of these objects had been one of those that he'd spotted. Sorry, my mind's full of stuff trying to filter it all through. But anyway, when Brazel found that he might have something interesting, or discovered something interesting, he then took it to the local sheriff's office. And of course, at this point, the story started to break. And what's interesting is that the army got involved. The army at Roswell got involved. And they sent a representative, which was Major Jesse Marcel, along with another private. They helped collect all of the material into the back of a truck. And the story broke that a flying saucer had crashed in Roswell. And once the military had actually got access to this material, in less than 24 hours, it changed from a flying disc that was that the military had in their possession to a weather balloon. Now, what's very interesting about this is the fact that they reckon that the military had found the initial craft many, many miles away. So what obviously Brazel was picking up was shards of the craft, as they think it impacted a certain area and then ricocheted off even further across the desert. But the interesting thing that we then learn is that Major Jesse Marcel, who had been involved in that case from its beginning, and obviously shipped the material back to Wright-Patterson's Air Force Base for further analysis, he was silenced, and his superiors had come forward to tell him that he hadn't got parts to a flying saucer, a flying disc rather, in those days, but it had been secret Mogul weather balloon. Now, we got to ask ourselves this question. Weather balloons were quite common back then, and if most people found them, they'd report them to the army and they'd be given a small reward for its recovery. If this weather balloon had been so secret, there are two things that I find quite bizarre. One is if it was top secret, it would have been recorded, it would have been documented, they would have known exactly where it was, they wouldn't have just left it for however many days it was, because they reckon the craft and certainly the entities that were found allegedly have been out in the desert for some time. So we can discount that theory for a start, that if it was that top secret experimental weather balloon, they just forgot about it or just lost it and didn't look for it. The second part is that they had Major Jesse Marcel appear on the front pages of the newspapers with parts of this so-called weather balloon that they'd actually switched for the original material, because Major Jesse Marcel stated clearly that the material that he was given and ordered to stand in for, or kneel rather in front of, was not the material that he held. And even if that was the case, that he was kneeling in front of this material, it's not that top secret, is it? When you discover that the military, I think, had in their possession an object, a foreign object of apparent extraterrestrial origin. This may have been the first time that they were unable to control the story. And I think thus the birth of disinformation and the cover-up started from that point. I'm not saying that UFOs didn't crash before that time, but I think this was the major incident that was getting out of hand, because the world became excited and a lot of newspapers and journalists got involved. So that's the case that interests me. I mean, there's a lot of controversy, there's a lot of speculation. You're going to get that in any case. But if you look at the rawness as the events transpired during that time and go through all the paperwork, you discover there is a correct pattern to the events at hand. But I actually believe that was a foreign object, not from this world. And then they changed the story many years later, saying that it was experimental dummies that the military had been pushing out. But they discovered that dummies, unfortunately, had not been created at the time they specified that these dummies were found, and i.e. they were covering the fact of the bodies also that had apparently been retrieved. So that is my kind of like, I mean, there's loads of UFO cases that I love and I find very interesting, and I think we can assume what is faked or disinformation compared to what we feel is the real genuine article. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the whole thing. You talk about the sheep. He was a sheep farmer. I always thought he was a cattle farmer, but it doesn't matter, I suppose. But apparently the sheep would often get entangled or walk amongst the rubble of these weather balloons. But if I understood it correctly, they didn't want to go near this particular weather balloon or whatever it was supposed to be. They didn't want to get involved with it. The mutton must have tasted a bit strange after, I must admit. Andy, what's your take on things?
I want to jump in on the military angle, because this seems to be a consistent thing within the UFO and the paranormal community. It does seem to be a lot of military people, and I don't know if you guys know, you probably know, Neil, that I play a game called Airsoft, which is like paintball, but it uses like plastic pellets, and I play that a lot in East Anglia. And in East Anglia there's a lot of US Air Force bases, and I made friends. I won't name him because he doesn't know I'm talking about it actually, but I made friends with a guy in the United States Air Force stationed in England. And he posted in mid-October, I'm going to copy and paste this over. The viewers at home will not be able to see this, and I don't want them to. But I'll post this over to Philip and Neil and Ian. So have a look at that. So I'll read out basically what he said. I asked him what he thought about the Rendlesham Forest incident, because where he's stationed apparently is not too far from there, and he actually went on a little excursion, I think, with a couple of his mates, just to see if there was anything there. But he basically saw nothing, and I don't think he was a particular believer. I think he took the view that people are just seeing things, and it's mistaken identity and that kind of thing. Because I have asked him about this, but this is interesting. Mid-October, he says, so a couple of weeks ago I saw a shadow figure rise out of the floor in the corner of my room, figured I was just sleep deprived, but freaky nonetheless. Today, I shut off the lights in the bathroom and was getting ready to hop into bed. I noticed this blue and white emanating from a crack under the bathroom door, but dismissed it as the light in the bathroom. It was pitch black and my iPhone light was off. Tried to get a recording of it, but when I shoved the camera literally against the crack emitting blue light, it wasn't registering anything. My screen was just black. He says, eventually the slow pulsating light went away. I checked the power outlets in case a plug was emitting that light, but there was nothing. Currently standing in the bathroom trying to figure out what the hell I saw. The light could have been against the light would have been against the base of the shower facing the door. Confused as hell. So I'm going to copy and paste the exact thing that he put there. And it actually, I don't know if this will come across. We probably won't be able to show this in the video, but I'm going to copy this link, see if this will work, of the actual video that he took. You can't see very much, but if you guys go into chat and have a look at that, but I'll describe it for the viewers at home because they probably won't be able to see the video. Where he's recording, it looks like a sort of blue and white kind of glowing light underneath his bathroom door, and he says it was completely pitch black. Now, the thing that really kind of got my curiosity was him saying that he saw a shadow figure, not just kind of self, but rising out of the floor. That's quite an interesting one, because most people, when they talk about ghosts or they talk about aliens, they're just there or they come through a wall, but not really kind of rising out of the floor. So I was going to ask you guys what you make of that.
I think, well, I tend to think that's interesting. I've heard this before, not rising from the floor, but walking through doors, interdimensional.
Yeah.
Interdimensional, these things. I mean, it's like the Roswell ship, as Philip was discussing, that to us is physical. But on that note, I can't believe it was down by a lightning bolt. I don't believe that. I can't believe an interstellar ship of such magnificent capabilities can be just brought down by a lightning bolt. I don't believe that. I have my own theory on that, which I'm publishing later next year through Philip Mantle. But what we are realizing is like the tic-tac UFO, as Dr. Ian was talking about. It's bouncing around like a ping pong ball in a jar. It's as if they're part of our reality, but they're not. They seem to. It's like a fringe. We said, didn't we, before, Neil, about touching the edge of reality? So it would seem to me that they are interdimensional. Yeah. I'm not saying that not from outer space. I'm not disclosing it, but it's the emphasis of these things. They're certainly their physical technology, which are fortunately captured by people, seems to be the best of both worlds. Ironically put.
Do you think that my friend, who was quite a skeptic, but being in the US Air Force, do you think he was not exactly targeted, but selected by these entities for a reason? And what do you think that reason would be?
They seem to toy or play with the military. I mean, I know I did say before about the battleships. I don't think it's entirely that. I don't, because they may have bases under the water. But it seems quite evident that the military there's like a magnet to them. Why, we don't know. We can't answer that, but there seems to be like a magnet.
Yeah, it's like the interdimensional hypothesis. I mean, when we look at this, as you know, I've been working on the greys, trying to understand or creating a model or theoretical model of application to understand how these beings appear to people through walls and doors. And I've argued this specifically, that us as human beings, we encompass the hardware, and we also have the software, the soul. And, we tend to try and look at things in too much of a materialistic level. I think that when we're dealing with another life form, it's possible or conceivable even to assume that they themselves have understood that they are more than the flesh and bones, if that's the right terminology to use for them, and become more synthetic. I've always stated that, that this consciousness is much more advanced than us. And I think because as a human species, we have subjugated ourselves through our mentality. And this is why we're not able to grow. And this is why I've argued repeatedly that we live in a system which is controlling and containing human thought. So we're not allowed to think outside the bubble. And God forbid if you do, you're silenced or you're pushed over the edge somewhere. So I think the interdimensional hypothesis is very interesting because the UFOs come and go in the blink of an eye, and to our perception, that seems like magic. But I think from their level, from their understanding, they've just advanced with regards to not just the physical hardware, but also how they can transform that hardware into something that becomes like a signal, and then turns into a physical device itself. We tend to forget that, you know, I always use the analogy of spirit communication or the soul, that you've got the mobile phone, you've got the hardware, and you've got the software that we can't see. And that software is unique to you, what you choose to bring into that hardware. And if the hardware is destroyed, then the software simply returns back to source, or may find another conduit with which to link with. And I've argued that perhaps talking about the greys, although not getting to get too complicated with this subject, because it goes on and on and on into the rabbit hole, but they interest me because of the way that they do what they do. So I think it's important for us to see that we're trying to look at it in a physical construct when there could be so much more involved with it.
There's a no, I won't interrupt.
No, go for it, Ian. Go on.
Okay, well, I was just thinking, but there's a couple of interesting points. There's two scientists. One's called Donald Hoffman and one's called Stephen Wolfram. So Stephen Wolfram's is a well-known mathematician, and he's worked with lots of very famous scientists. He's actually listening to an interview. He designed the alphabet in the film Arrival. Do you remember the science fiction film The Arrival? These gigantic aliens that look like elephants. They had this alphabet which was not time dependent, and he makes the point that he actually makes a couple of points. But one of the points he makes is that they may actually have a completely different view of the universe, the way the universe works. They may interact with the universe in a completely different way. And that where we intersect, it might appear to be very bizarre. The other guy is Don Hoffman. Now, Don Hoffman has got this idea that we don't actually see reality as it is. And he argues from evolutionary principles. And he says that if an organism were to have all the information coming to it for the whole greater reality, it would be not able to function. And as evolution only works on you propagating your genes, anything that increases your fitness, your ability to survive, actually gets selected for. And he's actually proven mathematically that what we see is a stripped down, pared down version of reality. And he likens it to a computer interface. So that when I interact with my computer, I might be using Windows, but then one I might be using Android, or I might be using iOS if it's a Mac. And his point is that we all may be, so humans might be using one interface, and extraterrestrials or greys or whatever might be using a different interface. So where we intersect might actually appear to be quite different because that we're doing similar sort of things with the underlying reality, but in different ways. So that might be one reason why they seem to be bizarre. Actually, Stephen Wolfram goes on even more. He talks about intelligence being coded into the universe. And even, actually, at one part of this interview I was listening to, he starts saying, well, the weather might be intelligent, but how it would communicate with us, we don't know, because it's as complex as the human mind. I'm thinking, my God, Stephen, you've just actually talking about weather spirits from a mathematical point of view. But we won't go there. So, I mean, I personally feel that intelligence is baked into the universe.
Sounds like a lot of hot air, but...
yeah.
But what I found interesting about Andy's friend's case, and this has come up a few times, and your friend perhaps wouldn't be aware of this, Andy, is that he described a blue light coming from under the door. Now, I've described someone's encounters with the blue glowing box in this military research place once. And there's also, again, in a similar military research place at Marconi or wherever, I don't know what the company was, someone described, I think it was a security guard patrolling the corridors of this establishment late at night, saw a blue glowing light in a room, and he went in, and there was a man with a helmet on that was glowing blue, thumbing through a filing cabinet or something. And this security guard
wasn't that Hillary Porter that described that?
Yeah, she described it. Yeah, and this guy just dematerialized in front of this poor security guard who had to be literally carted off somewhere because he couldn't handle it. But again, it was this blue light. So there's almost like this, whenever whoever they are, appear in maybe inside houses. I don't know about outside as a UFO, but they seem to material, if it indeed is the same people, they seem to come with this blue light. Whatever that blue light does, it seems to have a reason, whether it helps them manifest or be visible, or I don't know. But there seems to be an intelligence behind the blue light. Why it's got to be a blue light, for some reason, I don't know. But it's just not a point I'll make.
I just had a point there. It could be, as Dr. Ian has suggested as well, about the variety of thought. I mean, we have so many different types of aliens reported. We have the Greys, the reptilians, we have the Nordic types. There's so many variants, the mantids. But is it possible that we are not seeing them as they truly are? Is it quite possible that, as the doctor stated, that our consciousness is interpreting it to how we could understand them to be? What I'm saying is they're not solidified. This is not their final look. I have suggested this in my book as well.
But it's energy, isn't it? It's energy.
It's that they seem to change their faces as swiftly as they change their ships. So, as they say, our interpretation, or perhaps the simplest, and of course, when a group of people see them, it's like a virus in a respectful manner. Everyone who sees this entity will see it as that, but they are seeing something until that is upgraded to something else. You see, it's interested me how their faces changed all the time. That we have so many variant species, we could be seeing one of the same thing. It's only a suggestion, it's only speculation.
Ronald, you've got a good point there. If you look back at the history of UFOs, some of the first incidents were the airship sightings in the
phantom airships.
Well, they were I mean, they look like they look like Jules Verne type flying boats, really, with rigging and everything, and they seem to be just a little bit ahead of the technology of the time. And the occupants looked like ordinary, regular people who claimed that they'd invented this airship, and soon you'd hear about it, because we never did. And before that, you've got the ancient Hindu myths of the Vimanas, which are thought to be the gods. That the Romans saw these fiery shields. So it seems to take on aspects of what you're expecting. And I think I may have mentioned this before when one of you guys interviewed me. I always imagine robins. If you stick a red ping pong ball in a garden with a robin, the robin will see that as a robin and start facing off to it. And in its bird brain, it actually sees a robin. I mean, who knows what it sees, but it thinks it's a robin. But of course, we can see it's a red ping pong ball. And it could well be that these aliens, it's obvious to them that they're alien. And we look at them, we think, oh, no, you're a pixie or you're a fairy, or, because that's how we perceive it. We just can't see them properly.
Neil, did you ever hear the story of when, have you been to High Elms Manor before with their talks there and lectures there?
Yeah, a few times.
And Kat, who kind of like I don't know if she owns it or kind of like manages it, but I think she owns it actually. I
think she sort of inherited it from her late mother with her sister.
I think so. But anyway, she was talking about a Ouija board session that she did. And usually I'm very kind of like anti-Ouija boards, and I think they're a bit dodgy and a little bit kind of on the dark side. But I had heard some positive experiences of it. And she said that she actually had kind of like quite an interesting, quite an informative Ouija board session. She wasn't quite sure in her group who they were talking to, but this was quite poignant. The spirit that came through said that the way that the spirit world views humanity is like how we would view goldfish in a goldfish bowl. And they said that humans are basically living, if you like, in a goldfish bowl. And this is the only reality we know. But it basically said that there's so much more, and there's so much more that we could know or we could see, but we can't because we're in this goldfish bowl, which I thought was really interesting. And I'm sure the Kinsellas would agree that with this control grid and this kind of like this matrix that we're in, we can't really see beyond, our own little goldfish bowl.
Yes, I agree there totally. I mean, as I said, the interdimensional connections that people have, you can have a situation where there are 3 people and only 2 could see the UFO or indeed the being that's presented. And I think that the UFO phenomena represents itself on a very individual basis, because a lot of people who have spotted them or experienced them, whether or not it be a UFO or a past loved one, changes them. It alters their perspective of reality. And you know, I can understand how a lot of the public, the general public, the good public, who have been programmed, cannot see beyond the level of their programming, because, you know, thought comes through the brain, and is being recorded from birth till death. And that's why they say that a narrow-minded person is narrow-minded. My idea of that, like all of yours, is that it's because the field of conscious intent has been so squeezed tight that nothing will come through their reality. So I'm not saying about being gullible. I'm saying about, you know, approaching the subject with an open mind.
The trouble is with the open-mindedness, as Andy was rightly saying, is that the powers that be on this planet are suppressing what we would like to know. As the UFO subject or the spiritual has been banned in the past, the Ouija boards were banned. You have the UFOs that they constantly lie and lie and lie. They dismiss it. They give us little trinkets, little tiny things that which are dubious, then can be unknowing, that we will argue until we're blue in the face. Yes, the world hasn't helped. So your idea of the goldfish bowl, Andy, is absolutely correct, but that's not our fault. It's the way we're programmed, as Philip stated. It's the way the educational system raises people to just live, work, and die. Yes,
that's it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, we can think outside the box, but look what happens with the media. Look what they do to it. They destroy it always. It's like this balloon. They say if someone comes out with something genuine, they fill this wonderful balloon high, and it's you know, it's aliens, it's UFOs. They get a pin and they burst it afterwards. Say it's absolute fake, it's rubbish. So yes, we are in a prison, and I believe this is not. This has been suggested before, a psychological prison.
I think also that, you know, our understanding of this reality, the system needs to be questioned, because it's been controlled for, you know, hundreds of thousands of years. Human thought's been suppressed. But what people have to understand is that when we pass to the other side, we are not human. We are taking on a human experience within this field of vibration. Although the loved ones will come forward as we remembered them, we have to understand that we are not human. There are many other dimensions of reality. And this is something that is, I mean, we're still in medieval times. Most people believe that this is the only planet that has life on it, in the middle of this vast, amazing universe that we can't even begin to understand. And it is incredible. And I understand what Ian's saying, most definitely, as we all understand. You know, we may be programmed to see some kind of holographic construct, rather like a computer program. You have computer programmers who create games, and then we come onto the platform and we can go left or right, and this will happen. Unfortunately, with computer games, you can restart them. But in this life, we can't go back and restart our lives.
Reincarnation.
My favourite film is The Adjustment Bureau.
Oh yes, I love that. I love that.
That's
Going back to the thing about perceptions and how we perceive things, have you guys noticed that within the realm of paranormal, colours seem to be important? So, for instance, we're talking about the blue light that is very associated with kind of ETs and that kind of thing. White light seems to be kind of like symbolic of spirits, human spirits, or kind of like, you know, ghosts, if you like. And then when we get onto red lights or red eyes, we're talking about the demonic realms and kind of like the evil. And it seems to be kind of like blue, white, you know, red, and then gold and silver seems to be kind of like angelic. You know, you think about angels, or you think about the Nordic beings, golden light and that kind of thing. It's interesting, and it doesn't change between different people. So if people encounter demonic beings, it is usually red. It's not kind of like, it's not gold and it's not pink. It is usually red. You're not having some people saying, oh, well, I saw this and it's violet, and I saw this demon dog and it was kind of like a nice kind of silver coloured. It is always red. So it is almost like we are perceiving the kind of like an energy field that is showing itself in a certain colour to denote a certain kind of feeling with it.
Could be frequencies.
It's one of the things I'm fascinated by, which I don't know, so I've probably mentioned this before, is that the Nordic aliens always seem to be dressed in blue coloured suits.
That's interesting.
So that's another interesting observation.
Yeah, it must be a problem when they go to wash their space outfits, you know. Don't mix the colours.
Yeah, so they standardised on blue. So
yeah, I think the colours as well as mediums. You see these lights around. Sometimes the clients or the people I'm reading for, and I am colourblind, but I know my basic primary colours. I know what gold is and silver and blue. And these are the lights very gently that just turn up randomly. And I never know if it's the person that's communicating with the individual. When I see them, I report them even on my own. What's interesting is UFOs come through in lights, but on a much stronger level of content. And basically, you know, I'm sure that the UFOs are separate from those that we consider to be what we call in the spirit world. But we do know that light carries information, that light is the carrier of information. It carries information within it. And I've always wondered what the colors, the different colors mean, because I've always wondered, I mean, I don't get a red. I mean, they're normally white and they're blue or like a gold or a silver color. But I do understand, Andy, where you're coming from, that a lot of reports from people are, and you get like, you know, Skinwalker Ranch in America. You know, we've been looking at that, focusing on the research of that. And also in Bempton with Paul Sinclair, who's researching all his, you know, evidence of the paranormal down there. They see these red lights, and normally these red lights do indicate quite a lot of negativity or a bad feeling that accompanies them. And I know on Skinwalker Ranch in America is that most of the witnesses who've seen these red lights are absolutely fearful of them. These lights are able to distort the reality, or there's obviously an opening or some type of portal or some intelligence behind the lights that just wants to, you know, make itself known as some kind of negative energy. I'm not saying that all UFOs and paranormal experiences are negative. They're not, but a vast majority of them are, and they're reported.
It does strike me, suggesting Skinwalker Ranch and as the military, like your chap, your friend Andy, they are toying with them. This is toying with them. I mean, and I do believe the Skinwalker Ranch, a lot of the cases, I do believe them, because they're honourable men looking for answers. It's toying with them. This thing seems to be based on fear, and not all the time, but it's always fear. And of course, this would not signify another planet. It would signify interdimensional tampering. It's as if I said to Philip a while back, a lot of the cases, not all, because I'm not qualified to answer most of them, because the eyewitnesses are the best people to ask. But it does strike me as sometimes it's like that Stephen King book, It. I don't know the film, where it changes its shape to suit your fear. It's as if we're
choked down here.
It would seem to me that perhaps we're guinea pigs to them. Perhaps they're experimenting with us to see how we react, how we confront situations, and it is through fear. Because I've read a lot of these stories, just running off track a little bit here. I've read a lot of stories, and I'm going to say it, a lot of nonsense, where they're here, the aliens are here for intergalactic peace, and they're very concerned. I have not seen one shred of evidence to confirm that. The Second World War, we had terrible loss of life, absolutely terrible. I know it was war. We've had diseases, famine, destruction. They have done nothing. So if anyone, when I hear these, and I'm a little bit biased to this, I must admit, it's based on the research I've done, is that when people say they're concerned, there is no concern at all. It's as if they're either aloof, they're unconcerned, or they just don't give a damn.
Sorry, the only thing against that is, I mean, it may be some sort of Star Trek Prime Directive type thing, where they're not allowed to interfere. And there have been, I mean, just to counter that argument, if you look at the Zimbabwe Ariel school case, you know, where the flying saucer, the being there confronted the children and gave them telepathic images of ecological concern that you're damaging the environment. And a lot of the time, these images of telepathic communication have been about, from the very beginning, have been about, be careful, you're destroying the environment. It's almost as if they're trying to warn us, but they're not allowed to interfere. Maybe it's because it would interfere with our free will.
And also it would interfere with our evolution. So, for instance, you wouldn't sit a toddler down and expect them to do, a BA honours degree thing, and then sit down and do it for them. The child has got to learn. The child has got to kind of like do it for themselves. And I think you're right, Ian. I think the arguments that I've heard, because I've brought this up with so-called channelers and people that say that they communicate with the ETs, and this is exactly what they say. And I kind of like take the view that the way that the universe is, there are probably different factions of different aliens with different agendas, in the same way there are different humans, for instance, in the plains of Africa. Some humans go there to hunt animals and shoot them and kill them. Some go there to tag them and to have kind of like a scientific interest, but not interfere. So if a lion is going to go for a gazelle, the scientist will not step in and stop that from happening, because that's nature. Others will be there to kind of help the animals and to kind of like actively kind of like help them whatever way they can. So you can't really say, are humans good or bad for animals in Africa, because it depends which ones you talk to. And I really think that's the same case with the aliens, with the ETs. I think there are some here that are very negative, that want a new world order, that are embedded with the Illuminati and basically want to wipe out most of mankind. I think there's some scientific types that are just here to observe, what are the crazy monkeys going to do today, kind of thing. And I think there's some that are actually trying to help us. And I actually think possibly, going back to my friend, there might be possibly a positive aspect to this. I mean, I don't know, but for instance, my friend was quite not an avid skeptic, but I don't think he believed in anything ET or paranormal from when I spoke to him doing airsoft a couple of years ago. But if you were an ET and you were on the good side and you wanted humanity to start waking up to the fact that there are ETs out there, who would you kind of want to start talking about this kind of thing? Perhaps somebody who's a skeptic, doesn't believe in it. Perhaps somebody that's embedded in the military, and the American military especially. Perhaps somebody who would have quite a trustworthy position within the military. I don't know. I mean, because I tell you what, on his Facebook page, all of his mates who are military all started chiming in and talking about it. So this is bringing it into the consciousness of them. They're going to start talking to their friends and family. And what if this is happening not just to him, but to other military members as well? And that, as a mass consciousness, starts to get raised as something to talk about.
I mean, I'm open to all speculation. It's not set in stone, of course. It's just an observation. But I mean, as I said, I'm not qualified to argue any other case, but I accept all opinions because it is a paradox. So yes, that's a very interesting point, and Dr. Ian has stated as well. About the reasons why. Yes.
I think it's the same with communicating with those who've crossed over. We understand that consciousness survives this realm, this reality, and survives in a different dimension. And although, they are ready to give their evidence from their side, I'm sure that on occasions they do want to help us, but they can't because of some kind of, prime directive. So I understand exactly where Ian and Andy and you, Neil, and Ronnie are coming from, because we can only talk from experience. And I think I'm very open, very accepting of other theories, of other theoretical models, which must be explored. We cannot just go down that narrow go through that narrow window of this is what it is, because we just don't know. We have to encompass a whole sphere, which is fascinating.
The more we dig, the further we go.
The less we know as well, I think.
Yeah, I think
true.
We're coming up to a break now, gents. So I'll just say thank you very much for part one, for a fascinating discussion with Dr. Ian Rubenstein, Ronald and Philip Kinsella, and myself, Neil Geddes Ward, and Andy Chaplin. Join us for part two in just a moment.